what is real, what's fake, and how do we decide who we trust?
On Stories of Self, we go on journeys into the lives of ourselves and others. We see how stories connect, how they diverge, and how we can create our worlds and solve our problems. This is the real-life remix of storytelling, which is so often stranger than fiction. So come and sit around the fire, chill by the ocean, or get a coffee with me, as I delve into the stories of self that make, break, and remake us. Some stories are dramatic, some are serene, some will magically mirror you, and some will be delightfully different. I'm your host, Katie Reeve Arnold, and this is Stories of Self.
A combination of having something too sugary late at night, which didn't let me sleep, or maybe some poor choices about sleep, in collaboration with a car alarm outside that went off and was insane. Actually, it was like much louder than a normal car alarm, and incredibly piercing at 5 a.m. this morning, gave me the opportunity to I gotta see it that way, to binge watch the series Fake, which is from a book by Stephanie Wood and is currently on ITVX. And I know it comes from a book. I hadn't heard of the book actually before I saw the series, but one of the actresses, Asha Keddy, is just fantastic. She really embodies every role, and so once I saw she was in it, I was like down to watch that over the next few weeks. But it turned out that I was going to watch it within 24 hours of not being able to sleep, but also not feeling like I was actually awake enough to get up. The interesting thing is that it kind of brought a lot back to me. It kind of brought a lot back to me about my own life. And so just a brief kind of storyline for this is that Stephanie, it's a true story, and Stephanie Wood actually dated someone online and then she ended up kind of in a difficult time with that person. She didn't know what to believe and what was going forwards. And so then it's just, it kind of focuses on this idea of what is real, what's fake, and how do we decide who we trust? And I thought that was kind of interesting because I was actually kind of, I guess, questioning myself the other day when I last put a podcast up, because one of the things I questioned myself about was that podcasting is for interviewing other people, right? Right? Well, every other podcast I see, well, most of them anyway, they're interviewing other people. And this is just me talking. And I've tried interviewing some people, and I will interview more people in future. That's definitely an avenue I plan to go down. But actually, to be honest with you, Stories of Self is partly a big part of my healing journey and my ability to express and be myself. And so actually having this platform where I can express myself has been so healing for me. And one of the reasons for that is because I couldn't trust myself enough in the past in order to express myself. So when I spoke, when I interacted in any situation, I was always mindful of the version of myself that I actually brought to that situation, because there was something in me that was super aware of whether it was a true issue in the interaction, or whether it was something I was seeing in the interaction, whether it was something I was creating in interactions by actually, spending time with and being around people who maybe weren't 100% true with me. I was seeing that I need to manipulate myself and manipulate who I was being in order to actually make sure that the people liked me, that they got on with me, that there was an outcome that would be safe and beneficial for me. And in that, I wasn't really being myself. And so I've spent decades of my life, pretty much up until my early 40s, I spent, which I'm still in, so, relatively recently, no, I spent my whole time like kind of, I guess I want to say, it's a difficult word, isn't it, manipulation, but I was manipulating myself and who I was being in order to not really manipulate others, although I guess, if I'm going to be honest, more darkly in a way, yes, it was manipulating others. But I was really manipulating myself more than I ever bent their reality. I bent my own, in order that I could get on with them better, in order that I could be seen better, in order that I could be okay, in order that I could be, it was all right to be me. I felt like I couldn't be me. That doesn't make any sense, right? But it's the truth. I didn't think it was okay to be me. And that was something that I'd picked up earlier on in my life. And so I thought I had to create a me that it was okay to be in that scenario. And so the reason I'm kind of coming through this in this discussion before I move into talking about the actual mini-series and the book is that I wasn't able to trust myself. I wasn't able to be myself. I wasn't able to bring myself to the world. And I actually think that this podcast, in a lot of the episodes where I've actually just spoken myself, is part of a strong healing path for me to actually speak as who I am, to actually allow out everything that I am into the world. And you know what? I don't know if it matters if anyone listens to it. I mean, I hope that people who might get something from it, who might enjoy it, or who might see a mirror of themselves or some issues or someone else in their life, someone who might grow through it. I hope that they might enjoy interacting with it. But am I putting stories of self out there at the moment in order to serve the world? Or am I putting it out in order to serve myself? And I think the reality is that with Stories of Self, particularly as a podcast, I'm actually putting that out there with the main focus being supporting my own growth and being who I am, openly and clearly, without second guessing myself, without, and that doesn't mean that I'm allowing myself to be negative to other people or allowing myself to be awful to other people, but it's within my own sphere. I can just be who I am. And that might not sound like a revolution, but it is for me. And so it's been a really great journey. My other podcast, Soul Therapy, that podcast is focused on other people. In that podcast, in Soul Therapy, I'm focused on what other people are struggling with, what other people have come to me with, what other people are interested in hearing. And that's the place for that right now, because for me and I love it as well, but for me in Stories of Self, this journey it's supporting me right now. And I hope that in that it could also support some other people with these issues too. Now, why am I talking about the fact that I wasn't able to be myself? And it's been such a journey to actually just express myself openly into the world, to let who I am fly and not worry about that. Because that's the other thing. When I first started expressing myself, I would really worry about it. These podcasts, you can see me now making a few mistakes and you can hear those things in the podcast. But in the beginning, I wouldn't allow myself to have that kind of thing. I'm just being really honest. In the beginning, I was almost scripting things because it was true what I was saying. So it wasn't that I was scripting things with that past echo of manipulation of myself. It was truly me, but I was just so afraid to be an imperfect version that I was having to write these things out. I was having to re-record things. I was having to edit and cut things. If I had have started an episode and gotten a frog in my throat, like a little creak in my throat, I wouldn't have continued. I would have stopped and sorted that out, edited it out, and re-began as if nothing had happened. But now I can bring the reality of my situation as well as the realness of who I am with imperfection. And that's a huge step for me. And I think that in that's been part of my massive journey towards self-trust. But why did I even need to go on a journey of self-trust? Why didn't I have self-trust? It's because I grew up in my life with a lot of lies surrounding me in childhood. And as I was encompassed by these lies, as I was surrounded by them, I was an only child for a long time. So in that, there was no one really to turn to be confused with. Because people were either outside the situation, so they didn't understand it. And I mean, I didn't understand it myself, so I struggled to explain it or bring it. And I thought, as every child does usually, I thought that the problems with the situation was that there was something wrong with me and that it was my fault. So I was scared to bring that out into other situations where that problem didn't exist, because I was scared to spread that problem. I was scared to make an issue where there wasn't any by bringing that with me. And I know that doesn't make sense logically from an adult perspective, but from a child perspective, which is where we all come from, it's very, very, very normal to just blame yourself. And I didn't know that at the time. So I've gone through a big journey of understanding, realizing, recognizing, and really being with who I truly am. And I've put a lot of time and effort into this. I've not only undergone therapy myself, but I've also trained as a therapist in several different modalities. I've also trained in counselling. I've trained so whether it's individual, whether it's couples. I've experienced with CBT and DBT, cognitive behavioural therapy and dialectical behavioural therapy. I've experienced with parts work and all of these different things. And the reason for that is because I found these things so helpful to me in the beginning as well. And so then I pursued them because I just wanted to be able to bring that to other people and to bring that to every situation in life. Because the more I looked around me, the more I could see and the more I understood and went on this huge journey, the more I could see how there was evidence of issues around me every day. And that's not picking holes in people. That's just bringing one of my skills that I always had from being a scientist, which was to notice where something is incomplete, to notice where something doesn't work, to notice where an experiment or program that someone else had designed or that I had designed had holes in it, and to be able to work with those to improve them. And so yeah, I was just kind of bringing these things with me into life, and I recognized that I actually had all of this issue behind me. And this issue behind me, actually once I started to recognize it wasn't my issue, and that's the case with children, right? It's not usually their issue, it's an issue someone brings to them, but they just don't see it that way. So once I started to see it that way, and not just be told that from the outside, but to really recognise from within that I had done the best I could, even though a lot of the connections I'd made, a lot of the associations that I'd made as a child just weren't accurate. And that involves noticing that those things weren't accurate. It involves kind of, I guess, digging up the foundations of your life. It involves going into yourself and actually dismantling that framework that you thought was reality. And those belief systems, those things you believe that were never you. And this is also mirrored in yoga, actually. The journey of yoga also mirrors this with the concept of yoga chitta vritti nirodha, which is the idea of removing from yourself all the things from the outside that have become stuck to your mind since birth. So, of course, some of these are useful. Some of these are helping us, because they're helping us to survive, they're helping us to prosper, they're helping us to belong when we need to as children. They're supporting our growth. But once we become adults and we can do those things for ourselves, we don't necessarily need to carry those anymore. And if we continue to carry them, these are parts of other people. These are parts of the world. These are parts of ourselves from way long ago that are not really real. They're not really us. They're not truly ourselves. And finding our true self and reflecting our true self is, I believe, the foundation of happiness and the foundation of leading a life that we're happy and proud of and at peace in. Because if we're not leading a life that's true to ourselves, then how happy, proud, and at peace can we be? Because it's someone else's life or it's someone else's direction. So yeah, and I'm going to clear my throat again because I think someone's mowing the lawn outside, or they have been, and it's kicked up all the grass and things and all the dust, and it's just all like flowing in to my throat. Or maybe it's also that it's not easy to talk about these things. And I have to allow myself the idea that actually it can feel a bit threatening for me to talk about these things. It can feel a bit vulnerable and risky. And there you go. And so, yeah. And so, I can, in some ways, kind of self-sabotage myself from talking about these things. But, bringing it back to trust, what I recognized is, with the fact that I had this constant external set of lies that was, whether it was lovingly or whether it was for people's own self-interests, that's a story for another time. That's another story of self for another time. They were projected onto me as if they were reality, and yet I could see through them, because children are not stupid. And they are incredibly durable, is how I describe myself. I've always described myself as durable. The ability to continue to exist no matter what else is going on, the ability to withstand, to tolerate, to prosper in spite of all these things around you. So children have got this amazing ability to do that. And that's partly because of what they do in blaming themselves for everything. So as adults, we are more likely to turn around and blame the external world. We are more likely to turn around and say, oh, it was, this happened because, and find something external to hinge that on. And I definitely went through a phase of, it wasn't my fault because it was all these other people's faults. But that's okay. It can not be my fault and also not be so much all these other people's faults. It doesn't helpful to blame other people, because it's in taking ownership that we make a new path for ourselves, that we can find a new path for ourselves. So yeah, dealing with this kind of lies that surrounded me, it meant that I ended up unable to really trust or feel like I was worthy and strong and could belong as who I truly was. So then I found it really difficult to trust myself. And I couldn't trust myself. It wasn't just difficult, it was just impossible. And I thought I was trusting myself to become whoever I needed to be. This kind of almost like this ongoing metamorphosis, this constant shifting and changing. But it's painful, right? No one talks about that. No one talks about the fact that, when the caterpillar goes into a cocoon and becomes the butterfly, that all sounds really romantic, but actually it becomes a big pile of mush. It descends into this mush and it comes out in a different way. Now, if you're descending into mush, essentially, psychologically, every time you come across new people or a new circumstance, then that's not actually a very comfortable way to live. To have to feel you have to come out a different way, the perfect way for the situation, for the person that stands in front of you every time, is exhausting, but it's also just progressively more dismantling. The more times you do it, and you're doing it all the time, the more times you take yourself apart, the less of your true self you have to put back together again, because you push more and more of yourself into something that belongs again to another story of self, which is the shadow. I like to think of the shadow as being a giant cave across a chasm, and so as you push stuff into the shadow, you're kind of pushing it across this bridge away behind you into this cave behind you, into the shadow. So these pieces of yourself you don't think are worthy, that you don't think that people want around, that you don't think you can belong with, you're pushing those across this thin little bridge, and you're really wanting to cut the bridge behind yourself. The idea is that one day you'll have got rid of all of this stuff of yourself that isn't right, and you'll be able to cut the rope bridge that leads to it across the chasm, and just get rid of it and be what you should be what everyone else wants you to be. But actually, a lot of what you should be is now across the bridge in the chasm, and across the chasm and the bridge across the chasm in the cave. And so, you actually need to bring that back across in order to be yourself. It's about crossing the bridge yourself, crossing that chasm, despite the fear, despite the ricketiness, despite that kind of shaking in the breeze, despite the fact that you don't know if you'll make it back, and entering that cave and recovering everything you were and everything that you always truly were supposed to be. And the good and the bad, because sometimes we put things across that are bad, and some things we put things across that are good. We call the good stuff shadow gold, but some things, they kind of should be there. Those things where, maybe as a child you just wanted to take the things you wanted. Well, we have to put those across, and we have to because we're not allowed to do that, yeah? But the thing is that in reality, we can accept that that's what we want. We can bring that shadow back out and own it, because we can accept that that's what we want. We can accept that we look at something, we want it to be ours, we want to take it, but we don't have to do that. We can make the choices because we're an adult. It doesn't involve the fact that we get rid of that part of ourselves. That part of ourselves is okay that wants something, but there's a process towards getting that. That involves making that happen for ourselves, and it might not be immediate. It might be, who knows? But the thing is that we really need to bring all those things across in order to be our true selves, in the fullness of ourselves, in order to be able to trust ourselves. And if we can't trust ourselves, how can we properly trust other people? And this brings me back to the series. So the series Fake, based on the book by Stephanie Wood. And because the thing is, when I say how can we properly trust other people, I don't mean that always means that we decide not to trust other people. If we can't trust ourselves, it doesn't always mean that we decide not to trust other people. It can mean that we decide to trust the wrong people. It can mean that we push down any intuition that we have, because the intuition has not been fully embraced and embodied and guided. Because when we were, for example, for me, when I was a child and I was surrounded by a lot of lies, every time I noticed something that was a lie, of course, my intuition rose up and I knew that was a lie. And, being a scientist, I put things in place to double check that it was a lie. And so then I knew I was being lied to. And I wanted to trust myself, but I couldn't. It wasn't possible. Because if I had trusted myself at that time, then it would have caused an issue for me in my basic fundamental survival, in my belonging. And the belonging was the thing that provided, the food, the shelter, and all of this kind of stuff that allowed me to live. And so pushing that away, pushing that intuition away, moving forwards despite the intuition telling me not to, and accepting these things that I was told as true, but I knew were actually lies, but rather telling myself I had to accept them as truth. Well, that patterned a really, really bad framework within me. And you can see how if you are doing that on repeat, you are repatterning what you understand and recognize intuitively as lies and you can see as lies. You're repatterning them as truth. Now, how is that going to work for you when you move into an adult world of business and dating and all of this kind of stuff? The answer is it doesn't. Because I was repeating the pattern. So rather than finding people who were trustworthy, truly trustworthy to trust, I was finding people who weren't necessarily trustworthy and trusting them. Because that's what I trained myself to do. I trained myself that against the kind of natural instincts that I had. And I think this is what really came through for me in Stephanie Wood's book and in the TV adaptation, is that there is that question where we're left with, can we trust anybody? And for me, the really strong answer is, to trust anybody, we have to be able to learn to trust ourselves. And until we can trust ourselves, we are not moving with the skills and the intuition embraced and accepted in our lives in order to be able to truly see the circumstances around us. And in not seeing truly the circumstances around us, then that makes it very difficult to work out who to trust. We either can go too far in one direction and trust nobody, and block ourselves away and hide ourselves away and separate ourselves and become isolated. Or we can go in the other direction and we try to trust everybody, and trusting other people's understandings and choices and discernment of things above our own because we don't trust our own. But then how can we trust theirs if we've had to discern that we have trust for them? And we don't trust our own discernment. You see what I mean? It's a big spiral, and you get really pulled down with it. And I know you get really pulled down with it. I know how exhausting it is because I was in it for decades. And so what I would say is, at the base of it, whether it's online dating, whether it's business, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whatever it is, whether it's, deciding where to go next on holiday or, what to do career-wise, it's about learning to trust yourself. And learning to trust yourself is about learning to hear yourself. Hear everything about yourself, and be yourself. And if you can be in the wholeness of who you are, then you can find trust for yourself. And as I say, this podcast, allowing my voice without anything pre-prepared behind it, has actually been a really important part of me becoming who I truly am, allowing that out, recognizing it, hearing it, and learning to trust myself. And in that trust, that discernment about others hasn't just become possible, it's become easy. And I think I would always have wanted to think that I could see through other people's lies. I have a strong skill set for it because obviously I was recognizing lies from such a young age and living around them. But I actually, in the past, I would have struggled because I would have struggled to trust myself, and I would not second guess myself, my own decisions. Now, I both have the capacity to open up and let people in and hear them out, but also to call them out or just move away from them if I find them not to be someone I discern that I should be around. So, yeah, for me, it's all about your self-trust. And if you want to develop your self-trust, and by the way, with developing your self-trust comes your self-confidence. So there's so many people out there teaching all these different ways to bolster your self-confidence by kind of fake it till you make it. And in teaching you that you need to go out and find yourself if you want to be able to move into that trust. I'm teaching you, I'm telling you that I learned to make it and not need to fake it. So just open up. What do you want? What do you want right now? And allow yourself to explore and be and see the things that you want in a day. If you do not know, then just pick at random. Look into your childhood and have a look at some things that you used to like doing there or you wanted to do there and maybe you never have. If you don't like them when you do them, that's okay. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with trying them out. You're just living and learning, right? And you probably would have lived and learned when you were younger. There's some things that I'm keen to try roller skating. Like, to be honest with you, is this a good idea? I'm a lot further from the floor than I was, my head is, than I was when I was a child. I wasn't allowed to roller skate as a child. So I'm fascinating. I've always wanted to try it and I've always wanted to give it a go. When I try it, will I like it? If I do, great. And if I don't, that still means that I've embraced something that child me wanted to do and never got a chance for. So if I don't like it, maybe all it means is that there was a time for that in my past, and that time has passed. But I think I'll still be glad I tried, you know? And sometimes you try things and you really love them. And sometimes they lead to other things. If you don't know what you wanted, if you don't have any idea at all, pick at random. You know, just ask friends to come up with ideas. Look on the internet. None of it can hurt. It's all expanding you. It's all connecting you with you. And it's supporting you. You're giving yourself time and space to be who you truly are. In that, you will innately learn to trust yourself better, to trust you, to love you and support you and look out for you and be there for you. And in that, your self-confidence grows, your discernment grows, everything grows and gets better.
We are all telling our stories, and we are all telling ourselves stories about it all. Are you brave enough to walk with me into hearing, considering and understanding the stories we tell? Join me next time, where we'll be considering more stories and illusions and stepping into creating the freedom we desire. Every moment, we are who we are choosing to be. You choose. Choose you, because your story matters.